Black therapist, and I apologize for being late. We were having technical difficulties. I want to give a shout out to our guest that was going to be on, Kim Richardson. So I'm sorry, Kim, but we're going to have it on another show, I promise. But this topic is for Generation X and those who love them. Generation X is anyone that was born between 19, let me sure I get it right, 1960 and 1980, I believe. Yeah, I think it's 1960 and 1980. And that's a huge span. I have a nephew who I'm 10 years older. When it could even be 1982. And my nephew and I was a preteen when he was born, and him and I are in the same generation. I mean, that's how big this span is. But even though the span is big, the group is small. We only make up 16% of the population, but we make up 50% of managers and leaders in organizations. I think my sister just jumped on. So we make up 50% of managers. So 50% of us represent people who are supervisors, trainers, leaders in the organization. We are the lost generation. We're sandwiched between the baby boomers, and some are still in the work industry, and the millennials, who are either our children or they're our siblings who are maybe 12 to 15 younger than us. um, but we are the smallest generation. But we're powerful because of the fact that we are the leaders, and we're also the next generation that's retiring after the boomers. So we're also the parent of Generation Zs. So for a lot of us, either our children are millennials or they're Zs. And the Zs have just turned like 20, 21, 22. So these are the babies. And there's another generation after them. But without further ado, my sister, Kimberly Richardson, is here with us tonight. How are you, Generation Z? Generation X? Excuse me.
Yes, X is in the house. How are you? I'm doing
I
well, thank you.
am good. I know when X is in the house, when, we say things like X is in the house or hip hop, or we talk about Sugar Hill Gang or
Right,
Houdini,
right.
right? And at another video, I was talking about meeting someone at Essence. And we were going back today about Houdini and hip hop and da 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 da. And then another group came in, and they started talking about another group of performers I didn't know.
Right.
And because she has a daughter that's 25, she knew all of them. My kids
Really?
are like 19, 21, 22. So I'm like, but she was able, I kept saying to people, oh, she's passing because she knows either a millennial or she knows someone who's an older Z. She knows
Right.
all the people, so knows the music. But Generation X, we're a small group, but we're a mighty group. Hip hop turned 50, and a lot of us turned 50 or we're in our 50s.
Very, very much
Yeah.
so. Yes.
So how are you today?
I'm doing great, actually.
Doing
And I'm glad to celebrate Gen X. I think we still rule the world, we still control. We need to monitor the millennials and the Zs.
I love that.
They
You know, I
need to be fine tuned. I think
ooh,
a lot of that is missing.
we're gonna have a good conversation. Because I want to get into that about why we need what our purpose is. Because there are a lot of millennials and Z's who are very upset with us because they feel like we've disappointed them, right? And there are a lot of boomers who feel upset with us because we didn't hold the mantle for the civil rights movement because we're the babies that were born in the 60s and the 70s and maybe
Right.
the early part of the 80s. So there are a lot of generations that are a little bit upset with us, which is why they call us the lost generation, because we're small and
Right.
we had a big task after Martin Luther King's march, and we were the civil rights babies. Yes. So what do you remember about growing up as a Generation X, and what do you think our role is as
Growing
Generation
up,
X?
I remember the freedom I had as a child,
Mm,
being able to go outside at 4 years old, not far away,
uh-huh.
but being able to run free outside and play.
You remember that?
And it felt good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Running free. Responsibility. I'm not gonna lie, that wasn't talked about too much in my household.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of issues that got pushed to the side, and it was just a matter of do better. The attitude was to do better than we did,
Ah,
do
so
better than your ancestors,
yeah,
do
yeah.
better than your elders.
So there was the
Strive for
expectation.
something more, elevate yourself. That was the
Yeah,
goal.
yeah.
That was
So the
the goal.
so the people who raised us, right? These were the people from who were born in the 40s and maybe late
Right.
part of the 50s, right? Or early
Mm-hmm.
part of the 50s. And their legacy to us was do better, work harder, right? Because we've
Right.
opened the doors for you. Because our generation was the first generation that was able to add to, which was normalized, in which we were able to go to school with different um, cultures, different
Mm-hmm.
races. And
Right.
for us, it felt like the norm. Like for our kids and our grandkids, it feels like the norm to have a cell phone. It feels like
Right.
their norm to have a computer in every class. But that wasn't
Right.
our norm. We didn't have computers until maybe
No.
late 90s, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they've never known a period to not have a computer. And in our generation, we never knew a period where you couldn't have access to different people,
Right.
where you couldn't go into an environment where there were people on a bus who were the same race and no one's at the back of the bus. That wasn't our experience.
No, not at
Right.
all.
But you remember freedom being part of your childhood experience.
Yes.
Did you feel safer as a child, free to go out to roam? What was
Yes.
your expectation that you remember? 'Cause I remember some things too.
Just to have fun. Every day was an adventure.
Yes.
Like there was never a dull moment. Every day was an adventure. If it rained outside, there was always something to do inside. We
Yes.
had games, we had toys, we had what was that game you play with a handball and you have a quarter on the floor and you bounce the ball on a quarter to
I
make
didn't
it
play that.
move?
I didn't play that
Really?
yet. No.
Oh,
I
yeah.
played handball. I remember playing skellies. I remember playing red light, green light, one, two, three.
Coco
Catching,
Livio, yeah.
yes. I remember catching bees with a mayonnaise jar and putting flowers and stuff in it. Things like that. But when I
Mm-hmm.
look at, you know, children who were born in 2000 and up, a lot of them find fun on video games. It's not all that or outdoor stuff anymore. It's not the riding the
I
bike.
I don't like that because that teaches them how to stay alone, not to interact. It's everything, it goes against the grain of being interactive with other human beings just on a daily basis. If they're, even walking down the street, I see young people with their heads down in their phone and don't know what's going on around them. And
Mm.
I've seen people almost get hit by city buses, grown people walking like this. The attention, it just takes away. It's too much isolation.
Yeah. You think we were the generation that felt that was the last to be connected and aware? Because I can remember we had things called jams. Remember jams and this, yes. And it would be block parties where we get a
Yes,
DJ coming out and
yes,
people would, and you knew people's names.
yes.
Or you
Every
knew,
Friday night at the park.
yeah,
Yes,
and
yes.
eye contact.
That was a social event.
Yes.
Call it what you will. It was still a social event. We had something to look forward to. And it
Yes.
was just neighbors coming together, the community coming together.
Yep.
And it was always good. A good time was always had. I don't
Absolutely.
understand why now, if somebody tries to give a function outdoors, there's always an outburst of violence.
Right.
Always. For
Yeah.
some reason.
Yeah.
And that needs to be stopped. That's a whole nother issue.
Yeah.
The violence. But yeah, the freedom is everything because we interact with people better. We resolve issues quicker. We are quicker on our feet
Hmm.
because we had to stand alone outside. I was in a, I was, we're siblings, but I grew up as a single child.
Right. Right.
I had no backup. So I was my backup. You know what I mean? If
Right.
I got into something, I better figure out how to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I had no one to defend me, so I better know how to defend myself,
Right. Mm-hmm.
which is why I'm going to say something I'm going to issue a trigger warning. Yeah. I don't understand the cyberbullying. One press of a button or even the off button on your computer can delete somebody. I don't understand that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know it's a psychological thing,
Mm-hmm.
maybe because I'm not focused to having online relationships like this.
Yeah.
Everyone I have an online relationship, I have grown up with and interacted on a
Right.
human level in
Right.
person.
Yeah.
In person.
Yeah.
So
And I
this is just an advancement to a telephone.
yeah. But I think like there's bullying wherever you go. There's always a bully. I remember having a bully, but I think that cyberbullying takes to a whole different level because I remember having a bully in the third grade, but not bullies. There were never bullies in my entire life.
Right.
But usually when you deal with the bully, by you fight or you separate from them. They go to a different class, they outgrow the behavior, and you stop being afraid. Something happens as a shift, and you're able to go on with your life. But the way it is now, that people, not just one person bullies you, it's a whole community of people, and some of
Right.
them you don't even know, which is
Right.
why it's so different now. And that's where the isolation comes from, right? There's no one
Right.
to balance you out. There's no one to say, hey, that's wrong. Or there's
Right.
no one to say, hey, let's go for a walk because you're fixated by this. And
Right.
this can spill into your community depending upon what they're bullying you about.
Hmm.
Because people in your circle at your school might see the bullying and continue it, thinking that it's funny
Instead of stopping it.
instead of stopping it. So now we become a culture of voyeurism, where we're watching people. Remember that there used to be this movie, what was it called? Was it Shogun's Fun? It was something like that, where people would watch people. And I was like, this is ridiculous to me. It's like, who would watch this? And now
Right.
we got reality TV. We got shows like Love and Hip Hop,
Right.
Atlanta
That
Housewives.
girls club.
Yes, where we're watching people live instead of living and not being entertained by other people living, right?
They're
And it's
causing trouble. Yeah.
even at clubs. I've been in concerts and people like this. And I'm like, you're not even present for the music. You're so busy videotaping it that you're not present for the experience. And I think
Right.
that growing up, because we didn't have video cameras, I mean, some
Right.
people do cameras, rich people, but we didn't have like video cameras. They didn't come out until like late 90s, 2000, when the phones got more sophisticated,
Right.
but we were present.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
Always.
yeah, but if you didn't see it, you didn't know it.
Exactly.
But now people aren't as present as they used to be.
Mm-mm. Not at all.
And
Not
I'm
at all.
wondering, did we help create a culture that came after us, right? And the millennials and the Z's that allowed them to be, was our version better, them being better and being more autonomous, being more free thinking, being more isolated, being more with technology? Did we want them to be so better that we taught them to be isolated? The better for them come at a price, because better for us meant studying more, getting a good job. It meant
Right.
getting a nice settled house. Better look like something. And was this our version of better?
This is not better. You know what this is? This isn't better. This is excessive.
Mm,
And it's gotten to the point of entitlement.
what do you mean by that?
Gen Z, millennials,
Mm-hmm.
expect us to hand everything to them. And I can pretty much speak to this, because I've experienced it. They want everything hand it to them until their world is correct.
Mm,
They don't want to suffer. They don't want to do this because they're not ready to.
yeah,
You're never going to be ready. You just have to
yeah,
do it.
yeah. Is that entitlement or is that knowing they know their value?
I
Because
think it's more,
they can say, I know my value. So why would I do the extra when I know my value?
they may know their value, but still want to be handed that silver spoon.
Got it. And is that a spoon
And
that
that
you and
makes
I
it that makes a tragedy. That
got it?
makes it tragic for
But
all of us.
were you and I raised by people who worked hard? So we were taught to work hard. And then they figured out that they don't got to work so hard,
Right.
right? Like we were trained, some of us, not all of us, and something Carmen said, Carmen Kamala Fisher had said, we had some freedoms or liberties, but we were also silent in a way. I remember being told you are to be seen and not heard. That's why I believe that we are considered a lost generation because we were silent and hushed. And so we're silent and hushed, and we're also taught you got to work for everything you get. The more you work, the more you prosper. And
Right.
does that show up in the work field? Well, for a lot of us, we have this work ethic where we work until things are done, and the generations come after us, they work until they're finished. And, then,
Right.
and we'll go, no,
Right.
no, no. I'm going to stay a little bit later. I'm going, and they go, no, no. I'm doing work-life balance.
Right.
And we're like, but the community, and this is due, and they are work-life balance.
You have to make it
Yeah,
balance.
yeah. So do we work differently and live differently because we've had two different sets of parents? They've had us, and then we've had people who, because the baby boomers, their parents were, what generation were their parents?
Oh,
They're the World War I or the World War II people.
two. Yeah.
They were but they were.
Our parents were World War II babies.
So what was that generation? I forgot the name of that generation. If anyone knows, please put it in the chat box. But they were part of the generation with the big World War II boom, right? Which got
Right.
called the baby
Right.
boomers. Right?
Right.
The world got better. There was improvements, big boom in the economy. So boom came babies,
Exactly.
right? But a lot of the baby boomers' parents were soldiers, or they were something where they had a good work ethic, hard work ethic. If you were someone of color, your parents may have migrated from the South, but there's a work ethic about working the land. Now you're going to work hard up here in the factories.
Exactly.
And did we
Exactly.
inherit that work ethic? And did we
We did
extend to our
something
children?
got lost in the translation between Gen X and the millennials. There's something, I don't know exactly what it is, I can't pinpoint it, that
Mm-hmm.
they missed that we have full knowledge of. I
Mm,
wouldn't say knowledge, but it is something they missed because they are the parents of Gen Z.
yes.
My daughter's a millennial. Her son is a Gen Z. Our parenting tactics are completely different.
What
Completely
does it look
different.
like?
Um, Really, no punishment, no spankings. Um, my parenting, when needed, punishment when required,
Yeah.
spankings only when necessary.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another problem. The generations get away with more because of the
Got it.
laws that were enforced for abuse. There is a difference. I haven't heard anyone really address it. There's a
Mm-hmm.
difference between a spanking and abuse.
Absolutely. But here's the difference, right? You and I came up with Oprah, Dr. Phil, who was it? Sally Jesse Raphael. So we grow up being educated about, rights and about
Oprah.
child abuse. I watch Oprah at 4 o'clock every day.
Oh, trying to be
We
grown at
grew up, right?
17 watching Oprah
Yes,
Winfrey. Yeah,
but we grew up with all that literature and information about what's right and wrong about spanking, about child abuse. But the previous generations didn't have that as an optic. They didn't have shows that talked about, the dangers of not having conversations with your children, the
right.
dangers of overspanking. So we grew up with that. And I'm wondering if that caused us to modify how we parented millennials and how we parented the Z's, because my kids aren't millennials, they're Z's. And I wonder if that also shows up in how we work at the workplace,
Hmm.
right? Because I know a lot of millennials who are business owners who are like, I don't want to work anybody. I want to work myself.
That's beautiful. That
Because
is beautiful. And you know what's
yeah.
funny? I didn't share that mentality when I was younger. I look for it now though.
Mm, you
I was
do?
content with the 9 to 5. 5 o'clock come, my day is over.
Hmm.
It's not my problem anymore. It's not my problem until I come back into the office. So I never had a problem with that, maybe because I was brought up in corporate America. My mother took me to work with her from when I was 4 years old. So
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the office. I've seen her start out as an operator for New York Telephone Company. And as she rose, so did I. She became a secretary. Oh my God. We got a promotion.
But it
We
becomes
got
communal.
promoted.
Uh-huh.
Exactly.
Our come up becomes our come up. Hmm.
Yes, yes, yes. She moves up, so do I. So, and I have this to look forward to. And junior high school years, any day off from school, I spent at my mother's job. I would go there and help the managers out. And they're like, when you graduate, come back, we'll hire you. And yeah, and that was another thing, I wanted to pass down to my children is maybe they would be interested in my field, in the industry.
Hmm.
And I used to take them to work with me on holidays. School is closed. They right by my side at work the whole day with everybody in the office. Yeah, exposure. Exposure is everything.
Yes.
And you do that until they don't want to see it anymore.
Yes.
If they're still interested at 16, take them to work.
Yes.
Bring them to, they need to see this.
Yes. And did they become IT people?
My daughter is now starting to study cybersecurity.
It's cool. That is
So
wonderful.
she took the long way there, but she finally made it.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. It's so funny. Out of all my friends, none of our kids have followed us into our professions. My kids have been in my, I've had my practice now for 21 years. And
Right.
my kids have been to my office. They even played secretary for me a couple of times. And none of them want to be therapists.
They don't want it.
No, no. They like the benefits of being a therapist, but they don't want to
Right.
be a therapist. And I've heard that, but a lot of parents will say, my kids like the income I have and the lifestyle I create, but they really want to do their own way, become their own people,
Okay.
right? And I know for a lot of parents who are boomers, they groomed us to go into their fields, right? If your mom is an accountant, sometimes you're an accountant. So I know so many people who have a legacy of going into of certain fields in their families. Like my mom was a teacher, now I'm a teacher, right?
Right. Right.
Or they get there late. Like my mom is a teacher, and now I'm becoming a teacher, right?
Hmm.
For college students. And I think, but it took me a long while to get there. Now I became a
Right.
therapist. Now I'm becoming a teacher of therapists. But I think that there's a difference in that they seem to want to go their own way. And when I
Hmm.
speak to people who, even when I was hiring people, that it's a difference in experience. Like even my training is different from
Right.
the way I was trained as a clinician to a younger clinician. Their training is different than mine.
Okay.
It's more focused on diversity and inclusion and being very culturally sensitive and being very gender sensitive. And really talking about having those difficult conversations about race and culture. It's a big
Hmm.
emphasis on that, right?
Right.
Not just about being ethical, but there's a big emphasis also on trauma. Where when I was going to school, none of that was talked about. Race wasn't
Right.
talked about, right? So I think that with the changing of time, things look different, and it creates a divide between our generation and other generations, because either we had different kind of training, it was more
Right.
intensive or more focused, and they're having a different experience from us
Hmm. Yes.
in the workforce. And I'm wondering, just as people, do you think that our different cultural experiences sometimes causes us to not be able to relate to that generation? And then what does our relationship with the generation ahead of us look like with the boomers? Because now they're our parents and they're getting older,
Right.
right? Do you feel like we have a lot in common with these two generations, or do you feel like there's a disconnect
There's
because
a
of what
disconnect.
there's a disconnect? Why do you think there's that disconnect between those
There's,
two
I
generations?
see it. You see it every day. They just move differently. Um, One thing I can say, they are more in tuned with the inclusiveness
Mm, the
of
millennials,
everyone.
right?
They are, I would like to say, correct me if I'm wrong, I would like to say they are more tolerable of differences.
Yes. The other generation that's more diverse of all the generations.
Yes.
Hmm.
That's not a bad thing
Mm-mm.
because we all should be connected.
Absolutely.
We should all be connected.
Hmm.
But the only thing I could say Gen X could be better with is the separation still when it comes to racial issues.
Mm. How
Because
so? What do you think of?
it's our generation now that are in government,
Hmm.
local, federal, and maybe there's some baby boomers still hanging around in the Senate floor.
Oh,
I
there
don't
are a lot of baby boomers. Some people have just retired at 80. Like McDonald's, how you say his name? I forgot his name.
know. Yeah, I know who you're talking
Dude,
about.
he had a head injury.
He had two
Anyone remember?
strokes.
Oh, well,
He
two
had a
strokes and a
stroke.
head injury. But his cousin, I forgot his name, but I know he just stepped down and he's
Yeah.
going to do the rest of his term. But most people are saying, should there be a term based on age? Because most of the people who are in Congress are over 70 years old.
Yeah, there should be a term. There should be a limit for president too.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't want an old feeble person just because he could doesn't mean he should.
yeah. But here's the other part, right? And
Then
this
they
is
call
to
that
say,
ageism. Oh,
it
it's
is, it
discrimination.
is ageism. I'm
But
just
you
saying.
wouldn't let an 85-year-old drive a city bus, would you?
I don't know. Depends about the 85. I don't know. But here's the thing. I don't know, right? I don't know because I do know that I know some 80-year-olds who are sharp, who are still driving, who are still cooking, who are still breathing. I don't know. But here's the thing, that the boomers are actually more active and many of them are still working. So if you're someone who's 50, your mama could be or dad could be 68 and they are still working,
Right, right.
or 72 and they're still working. It's very different from before where at 65 everybody comes out. Mm-mm. People are still in it. And some of our parents who are, let's say, 70s or 80s are still in a place where some of them are still taking care of Generation X and Z and the millennials.
X should be taken care of by now.
I know, I know. Some of them are, but I think many Generation X people are taking care of older parents because older parents are starting to have health issues,
Right.
right? And
That's
there might be,
okay. That's okay. That's nature. That's how
right,
it should be.
right.
That's how
And
it should be.
so, do you think that this is the generation, we're the smallest generation, but do you think it's the generation that has the biggest responsibility because many of us are still raising adult children? or we're raising people who just came out of adolescenthood. So we're in that place where we're not quite finished raising people or guiding people. And then you've got these parents who, as your children get more independent, parents who might become more dependent. So being gives you
Right.
a seesaw. Have you experienced that as an ex, where there's like a seesaw kind of experience, where either the
Right.
kids get more,
I've heard about such things, but yeah, no,
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 no, yeah,
not at all.
or for some people, it's the seesaw where the kids get more autonomous, and then the parents start getting sicker and they need you more. So you don't get that empty nest. That nest gets filled with parents and their appointments and their illnesses, or the kids fail to launch. They don't, they're not financially independent of you. They still need to lean on you. They still need your guidance. They still need your income in order for them to manage the day-to-days of life. And then you've got parents who might need you. So it puts you in another place as an ex where you got now parents leaning on you, adult children leaning on you, and maybe even grandchildren leaning on you. And then you might be a manager. So you've got employees leaning on you. So you got three
Yes.
places where everyone's leaning on you. But
Where are you supposed to go from there?
where do you go from there?
Uh, the failure to launch children.
Mhm.
There's an app for that, I believe.
There is an app? No, there's not. Is there really? there's a, I know there's a lady on Instagram who's saying, thank those
Oh
kids.
my God.
Who,
There
I don't
should
know
be
about
an app for that. That would solve everything.
how
There should
so.
be like an eject button for them
For the kids who fail
somewhere.
to launch.
Yeah, for
But they might not be able to launch because student loans are so high. That's one thing, right? Because school has increased, which is debt has increased. Or maybe they have failed to launch because they don't have direction. Because maybe we have given them so much room to figure it out that they're taking the time to figure it out.
that could be a mistake. That
How so?
definitely could be a mistake.
Tell me more about that. But I think it might be a mistake.
Giving them too much room or ultimatums. It's you should by high school you should have a plan. Work or schools, not difficult. Or if you want to venture out, if you want to travel, I say
Hmm.
join a service.
Got it.
It makes sense. You get to see the world.
Yeah.
You're away from mom and dad at 18.
Hmm.
You get to test your wings out,
Hmm.
and they're not going to let you fall
Hmm.
unless you have a health issue,
Right.
right?
Right.
Um, it's just a bad situation. Sometimes parents, as myself, fall ill, and the children, have to care for us. But it's a process. Everything's a process.
Right.
Things happen for a reason, and again, you have to find that balance.
Yeah. So that they can support you as you're supporting them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's the balance that happens.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
And within that balance, we want also, because there are a lot of Generation X people who have fallen ill due to illnesses
Mm-hmm.
or things have happened that there was no fault of their own. And sometimes the children come in to help. And what we'll say to people, and it's just, we talked about this on our last show, make sure that you're helping the parent, right? But not sacrificing your life to help the parent. And for
Right.
parents, make sure that you're helping your children if they fail to launch, but that you're not enabling them to stay disabled. Because sometimes people never launch, right? They never get that stride, or they don't figure it out, or things don't go well with them. And what some parents will say who are exes is that, wow, their childhood is extending into their 40s or into late 30s, where I'm
Mm-hmm.
still stepping in and paying the rent, or I'm paying the phone bills, or I'm
Right.
paying my grandkids' school. I'm still stepping in and I haven't had an opportunity to step out. Or the kids will say, you know, um, I haven't had a chance to really have a life outside of my parent because they've always been very sickly or there's always something happening. So they never had that opportunity to have with other children or adults
Outside
an
experiences.
outside experience or the separation.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not fair.
No.
That's not fair to the child. It's not. It could be for other reasons too, financial reasons, not just
Hmm.
health
Hmm.
issues, and it holds the child back
Hmm.
from going out on their own.
Right. But it
I
may
had a
also.
therapist recently. I overheard my one of my therapists telling one of her clients, "I'm never moving out. I'm never leaving my father. He's going to have to throw me out the."
Wow.
I would say she's in her mid 20s, late 20s. I don't
Mhm.
know. She's young, adorable, because she said her boyfriend was pressing her about moving out. She told him
Mhm.
no, never.
Yeah.
She said, "I will never leave,
Yes.
never." And
Hmm.
I thought that was the funniest thing because she was very honest about it.
Hmm.
She
Absolutely.
has no desire to leave home.
Yeah.
She knows what the rent is out there. She's a professional.
Yep.
She's a physical therapist.
Hmm.
She's
Yeah.
not leaving.
Yep.
She's not leaving. I said, okay, at least she knows she's not going to leave. She's not going to pretend that
Yep.
she's going to leave the nest sometime within the next year or so.
Hmm.
But we prepare our kids to be adults. I think that's the biggest thing. And either they get it or they don't.
Right. Right.
How much more do we have to do after high school? It's your life now. What are you going to do?
And that's Generation X
I,
millennial.
I can't live your life.
Right.
I got my freedom June something, I don't know, June 24th, 1904. No curfew. I told my mother and my grandmother the day I graduate, there is no
Mhm.
more curfew. Don't ask questions. See you around.
Yeah. That
I
was your
graduated.
Emancipation Day.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And it was beautiful.
Yeah.
That was a
And
great summer.
and
Graduation, then my birthday the next month. And then I started at the phone company, my first job.
yeah.
Thanks to good old nepotism. Yes, I said
Good
nepotism.
old nepotism was very. So you had a hookup. And here's the thing, right? Most of us get in through nepotism and networking, right? It's who you know. And that's how we
Exactly.
open doors for our
Yes.
children. And that's how our parents open doors for us. Because we
Yes.
do
Yes.
nepotism through
Yes.
networking, but we also do sponsorship where we open doors for people like, hey, I heard about this job. Let me call you up. Let me bring you in the room. Because of the fact that we realize that we all need that beginning. The only problem is that when we open those doors for our children and they keep going through the doors and then come out the doors and they go through the doors and they come out the doors, right? Same thing could happen with parents where
Right.
they're retired and then they struggle because they retired too soon or they didn't plan it out,
Right.
right? So then we're stretched. Where
Mm-hmm.
this person just got autonomy and freedom, and you, as happy as you were when you were emancipated, I bet your parents were happier, right? Because they weren't happy when you emancipated, when you were like, I'm a woman, I got my own job, make my own money. They weren't
They
happy.
just worried about my safety.
uh,
But I see, even though I emancipated myself, I
yeah,
didn't abuse it. I wasn't 18 saying bye mom on a Friday night and coming home Tuesday morning. That I did not do.
with a level of respect, that was there.
I was still under her roof. I knew that.
Hmm.
Two, I now have a job in
Hmm.
corporate America. I have a 9 to 5. I
Yeah,
knew I had a curfew Monday through Friday, Monday through Thursday. I was in bed still at 9 o'clock as if I was still in high school.
right. So there was a certain level of respect But what happens, I'm not trying to stereotype, but what happens though is that there's the absence now of a power differential, right? So when a child feels like they're an adult or feel like they're enough, they become the equals. And if, but many people who are younger, it feels like communal living where, yeah, you're my parent, but you're also in my community. And
Right.
I don't see the power structure. I just see another human in front of me. And I think for Generation X, we see the power structure. No, I'm the parent, and even though you might be 40 or 35, I'm still the parent in the house. I'm still on the mortgage. Even though
Right.
you're giving me something, there's still that structure. But I think that for a younger generation, power is not seen as a good thing. It's seen as a divisive thing. And I think something Nikki just chimed in and said, we could do better with Generation X. And that somehow we by being different and being more open, or by society changing, the millennials and the Z's have gotten an experience where they get to be free to be who they are with no judgment, and
Right.
they get to see the world without seeing hierarchy, without seeing have tos, without seeing commitments. Right?
Is that necessarily a good thing?
I don't know. What do you guys think?
I
Let's
don't
go
think
active. Please
so.
chime in. Do
I
you
don't
think it's
think
a good thing?
so. I was out today in my new environment,
Yes.
and
In the
it
Carolina.
scared me. It scared me a little bit because I saw a few, I guess, Z
Mm-hmm.
people.
Yeah.
Oh God, if they're going to take care of the millennials, it's not going to happen.
Why do you think it's not going to
It's,
happen? What's
I
not going
know
to happen?
everybody talks about, oh, don't judge, don't judge.
Right. No judgment.
I
And that's
didn't
part of
know it was in vogue to walk around looking like you just stepped out of Barnum Bailey's Ringling Brothers Circus in broad daylight, and it's not even near October 31st.
no
I'm
judgment.
sorry. I'm sorry. No. Finding another problem, the reading, the
Mhm.
articulation, school, just school, period.
Right. 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 And I'm reading some of the comments. This is what Nikki said again. She said, we help provide a life for the kids to become whatever they want to choose to be. Like we're the generation that was, free to be me and you, free to be you and me. Remember that show? We're the Sesame Street pop generation. We're the
Yes.
pop generation that make it comfy, right? Where you can
Yeah.
choose to be whatever you wanted. You didn't have to be fit into the stereotype. And then our kids learn the biggest takeaway from us was you can choose, right? Like I can choose to be something that my grandparents didn't get a right to be because of racism or sexism. And then our kids learn from us, they can choose beyond that. They
Right.
can even choose how they show. I think Monique is in our generation that talked about coming to the bonnet to the airport. And that people are saying, I want to make a choice, even how I show up at work, how I show up in my family, how I show up in the community. I want to make a choice to just choose, right?
Hmm.
And sometimes that puts a disconnection because we're looking at what's appropriate and they're looking at what feels right.
Right.
And that might be the distance between us and the younger generations and the older generations. They're still looking at us as baby from the baby boomers perspective of how things should be,
Right.
right? Do you see differences between how you think and the boomers think? Or do you think it's the same?
Um, I will tell you, it's almost neck and neck.
Hmm. You think
The
so?
the the way we approach things, and I think our train of thought is on the same curve.
You think so?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah.
because
It's
that's the generation, the baby boomers ruled us with that iron fist.
some of them did. Some of them did. Yeah, absolutely. But you know what's
And
interesting?
even not resorting to that, but the standards, the expectations were there. The
Yeah.
talking tools were there. They expect you to do this. They laid down the law, is basically what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
we adhere to it. And what it did was instilled our values in us.
Yeah.
So we still have that. Gen X still has that.
Yeah.
That's what we got from
Yeah.
the baby boomers.
Absolutely. So we got a sense of values and a structure from them. But
You
it was
need structure because without the structure, everything just becomes chaotic.
right. And maybe that's what shows up at work, where we come in structured because now we're the managers, we're the leaders, we're the organizers, we're the directors. We're coming in structured and they're coming in fluid,
Right.
right?
Right. Yes.
Yeah. We're coming in like the way we're raised and they're coming in fluid. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's a structure part of us, which I always say to people, baby, I mean, Generation X, we were born during civil rights, but sometimes we are the generation with the least rights because we're so responsible. Because everyone in the boomers wasn't responsible.
Right. Right.
Everyone's,
They
and we
kind
come
of
in
passed the torch to us,
right. Yeah.
but we didn't know it was passed to us.
And sometimes some of those boomers may have dropped some torches that
Right.
we became that we picked up and we became the overfunctioning generation.
Right.
Because we had liberties and rights that they didn't quite have. Like if we look at our parents in the civil rights, a lot of them were 18, 19, 20. So they benefited from some of the things that were passed in the 80s or the 70s with affirmative action, some things that they benefited from that we also benefit from. But
Mm-hmm.
the expectation from sometimes our parents were we would to be these people who would be their come up, or we were following their footsteps,
Right.
right? And so we've had a high bar to meet,
Yes.
right? But what happens if you're an ex and you never meet that bar and you only
Ooh,
live in a disappointment?
that's something to live with.
It is something to live with. Because sometimes even the Generation X, your parents could be in their 70s, and if you've never felt like you've met that bar, you live in the feeling of disappointment, or if you've always felt like, wow, I feel like I'm the adult dealing with a parent who's like a child, because they're still on, love and peace and happiness or whatever.
Right.
You might be over functioning in both places for both generations.
Mm-hmm.
And that if that's the case for you, sometimes retirement doesn't look like it's coming anytime soon because people are living longer.
Yes,
Boomers,
they are.
guys
Thank
live forever.
goodness.
They're wonderful. The longer they live, the longer they work, right? And they're an amazing generation because a lot of them are in great shape and they're still
Yes.
very active. But it puts us in they put a ceiling on us because if we're mid level management, they are the management at
Mm-hmm.
the top, and they're not going anywhere,
Exactly.
right? But what happens is that they don't go anywhere, and then there's an explosion of millennials, so we get stuck like right here,
Right.
right? Well, if they do lead, we're leading a large population, and there aren't that many of us,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Are you sure about that?
We're 16% of the workforce, but we're 50% of the managers,
Okay.
which is weird. Um, we are the smallest generation. The millennials, I think 2 or 3 years ago, just surpassed the boomers in numbers.
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Mhm.
I
Which is
did
why
not
wherever you see, which is where wherever you go, you see boomers and you see millennials.
know.
They outnumber us.
But we still control everything.
50%. We're the 50% of all managers and mid-level
The
managers.
boomers need us, and so does millennials and the Gen Z.
Yeah.
We are stuck in the middle, right in the middle of this.
Right in the middle of it. Right.
But it's a blessing to be Gen X because I think we are so revered. And it's like, I could sit here and brag about what was missed.
Hmm.
from back in the day, the dress, the freedom,
Yes.
just life was different.
Yes.
The way you moved was different. It was
Absolutely.
beautiful.
Yeah. It still is beautiful.
Yeah, it is. It's different, but it's still beautiful.
It is. It
But I
is.
think we can make the most fun of this too.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's the beautiful thing about being a Generation X, that you are either in early 60s or you're all the way in your 40s, late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things for us to really think about as Generation X is we're up next. It's our turn, right? We're too young for many of us to retire, right?
Right,
Because people still need us. But one of the things that we have, our biggest takeaway is, what do you need for you? What is your vision for you? Because we grew up shaped and structured by someone else's vision and rules. What are your rules? What do you want for you? What's your why? Why are you doing what you're doing now? Is it because you've been raised to be this person who's a hard worker and that's your value system? Or is your why because of the fact that there are people who are younger than you who depend upon you? And
right,
how you create that space for you so that you have a number of when you end. Because for a lot of us, we don't think about ending because there are two generations above us and behind us who still need us.
right.
But for everyone
But
that
we
has,
have that drive. I think we have that work that
yeah,
ingrained in us, that desire to work. To if you know you're good at something, go do it.
mhm, absolutely,
Do it till you can't do it anymore.
absolutely. Do it until you don't want to do it anymore,
Right,
right? Don't do it
right.
until your body stops you. Do it until your spirit stops you. You go, I don't want to go to work today. And if you have those days back and back, it's time for you to come out,
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
Because I think for a lot of
Because
people,
there is a cutoff point. We should, retire
yes,
and enjoy the rest of our days.
hmm,
So why
absolutely,
not? Yeah. Everybody's clock is different though.
absolutely. And
Everybody's clock
we
is
want to
different.
be clear that everyone's clock is different, but you have to know your clock,
Right.
right? And we get
Set a
lost.
goal and
Yeah,
hopefully you'll get to that goal
absolutely. But
and
be
then you can proceed from there.
absolutely, but be clear about what the goal is, what the number is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And don't let fear stop you because sometimes we're afraid that if I come out and my boss, who is now 70, leaves, who's going to take his place? Not this one, not this one. So we overwork, we stay too long, like we're staying too long at the party. The party is not good after a while.
Right.
We have to make decisions based on who we are and what we want
Mm-hmm.
and what our next vision for our life is, right?
Exactly.
Because we have to
Everything
have
has
our
to be
own,
planned out.
absolutely. And people can live without us. And it is our job to prepare the next generation behind us to take our spot. And it doesn't have to be the way we do it, it just has to be done. And the
Whatever
best way,
works for them. Because we have to wash our hands of them at some point
oh,
and let the chips fall where they may.
absolutely. So it goes back to what Carmela said, we're the generation that were seen but not heard. But we can become the generation that gets heard and seen at the same time because we're in the room. And being the smallest doesn't mean the weakest.
No, of course not.
Uh-uh.
Of course
Because
not.
we're the
Who
glue
said
that keeps
that?
nobody, not to my face.
Exactly.
Sis, you're amazing. Thank you for being on the show and spending a little bit of extra
You
time
are
with
so
us.
welcome. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. And for all those Generation X's, you're up next. Make a vision for you. Know that you deserve more than life can ever give you if you're silent. Speak up, speak out for you, advocate for you, but have that vision about what happens next. Listen to your value system. Be clear whose value system is. Is it yours or did you inherit it from Boomer? And figure out why is your why. Is it because you're afraid that the generation behind you won't make it? If that's your fear, challenge your fear. They're more than enough. And you deserve more than enough. So
Right.
good night, everyone. Bye.
Good
Thank you,
night.
sis.